When a multi-billionaire cast aside his loyal wife for a glamorous model, he thought he had upgraded his life. But years later, her breathtaking entrance, hand in hand with four stunning quadruplets, turned every head in the room, leaving him powerless in her shadow. The night he left her replayed in her mind more often than she wished. There had been no shouting, no broken dishes, no scene that could explain the hollow ache that followed. Just a cool, calculated announcement over dinner, delivered like a business transaction. "I've found someone else," he had said, adjusting the cuff of his custom-tailored shirt as though sealing a deal. "You'll be fine. You're strong, strong." She almost laughed at that word now. Strength hadn't been a choice. It had been the only option. When the tabloids splashed his new relationship across their glossy covers, him, the multi-billionaire, with a dazzling young model draped on his arm, her name became synonymous with pity, the wife who wasn't enough. She had learned to carry that label in silence, but she carried something else too, something no headline could ever define. Four little lives that looked up at her with eyes that mirrored both her pain and her hope. Quadruplets. Their arrival had been overwhelming, terrifying, and miraculous all at once. And though she often wept at night, by morning, she would press kisses to their foreheads and whisper, "We'll be all right. Mama won't let you down." The years that followed were a blur of bottle feedings, midnight cries, unpaid bills, and small victories. She traded champagne galas for secondhand strollers, glittering ballrooms for cramped apartments, designer dresses for supermarket clearance racks. But within those walls, she found something more precious than the hollow luxury she had once known: purpose. Her children grew, each with their own spark. One bold and outspoken, always asking questions, one gentle, with eyes that carried quiet wisdom, one mischievous, finding joy in the simplest things, and one protective, hovering near her side like a tiny guardian. They filled her life with noise and love, painting over the silence he had left behind. Meanwhile, the world kept spinning with him at its center. She couldn't escape the glossy headlines: his new yacht, his new estate, his new wife glowing on every magazine cover. The model was always perfect, always radiant, always positioned as his crowning jewel. Society adored them, forgetting the woman who once stood in that same place. But time, she discovered, has a way of humbling even the most untouchable. With each passing year, her grief transformed into resilience. She worked tirelessly, building a modest career, stitching dignity back into her life, one day at a time. And though whispers still followed her in the shadows, "Isn't that his ex-wife? Didn't he leave her for the model?" she carried herself with a quiet grace that silenced mockery. Still, deep down, a flicker of hurt remained. Not because she wanted him back, no, those days were long gone, but because of the way he had discarded her, as though she had been nothing. That wound never fully closed. One crisp autumn morning, a letter arrived in an envelope gilded with gold. She recognized the emblem before she even opened it, the crest of his empire. Her hands trembled as she slid it free, her heart thudding in her chest. "You are cordially invited." It was the gala of the year, an extravagant celebration of his company's success, attended by the world's elite. The very thought of stepping into that room made her stomach twist. He would be there, of course, standing beside the model, basking in the admiration of everyone present. But then, as if sensing her hesitation, one of her children tugged at her sleeve. "Mama, why are you frowning?" She looked at them, four pairs of bright, beautiful eyes gazing back. Eyes that deserved to see her not as a woman defeated, but as a woman who stood tall. And just like that, a decision crystallized in her heart. If society wanted a show, she would give them one. Not for him, not for the gossip, but for herself, and for the four souls who had given her strength when she had none. She would walk into that gala. She would not hide. She would not cower. This time, the spotlight would find her. If you were in her shoes, betrayed, discarded, but given the chance to reclaim your dignity, would you walk into that gala or stay away? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Welcome back, my amazing family and friends. If you're ready to dive into another exciting story, make sure to hit subscribe and drop a comment telling me where you're watching from. Tomorrow, I'll be sharing another story just as thrilling as this one. And trust me, you don't want to miss it. Now let's begin. The night of the gala shimmered with wealth. Crystal chandeliers glowed above a hall draped in gold and ivory, every corner brimming with society's elite. Luxury cars lined the entrance, their polished surfaces reflecting the flash of cameras as dignitaries and celebrities swept past velvet ropes. Inside, laughter mingled with the delicate clinking of champagne glasses. Waiters in crisp uniforms floated through the crowd with trays of caviar and wine. At the center of it all stood the man who once promised forever, her ex-husband, the multi-billionaire, flawless in a tailored tuxedo, his arm around the model who had replaced her. She glittered in a gown of silver sequins, every move practiced for maximum admiration. Reporters leaned close, eager for a quote, and cameras lingered, desperate for the perfect shot. The pair looked like royalty. No one yet knew that the real spectacle hadn't arrived. The applause faded, but the atmosphere in the hall remained charged. Guests leaned in, whispering with fascination. Some smiled warmly at her, as though silently applauding her strength. Others studied her with curiosity, trying to reconcile the woman before them with the image the media had painted years ago. She carried herself with calm grace, engaging politely with those who approached. The children, naturally curious yet astonishingly composed, charmed everyone. They accepted compliments with shy smiles, answered questions with innocence, and never once strayed from her side. It was as though they understood the gravity of the moment, that tonight wasn't just about attending a party, it was about rewriting their mother's story. Across the hall, the multi-billionaire watched, his expression unreadable. He raised his glass to his lips, but the way his fingers tightened on the stem betrayed him. The model at his side shifted again, her laughter a little too forced, her poses a little too sharp for the cameras still lingering on the other side of the room. Finally, the moment came. He excused himself from the cluster of admirers and began to walk toward her. The crowd, sensing drama, parted like the sea, eager to witness the encounter. She noticed him immediately but didn't flinch. Instead, she placed a steadying hand on her son's shoulder and stood tall. "Good evening," he said when he reached her, his voice smooth, practiced. "You look... well." She met his gaze, her own calm, unshaken. "I am well. Thank you." For a moment, silence stretched between them, filled only by the hum of conversation around them. His eyes flickered toward the children. They stared back with a mixture of curiosity and quiet defiance, instinctively protective of the woman who had carried them through storms. "They're beautiful," he said at last, his tone softer. "Ours?" She let the pause linger, savoring the discomfort in his question. "Mine," she replied gently but firmly. "They are mine?" The words landed like a blow, though her tone was polite. A murmur swept through those close enough to overhear. He forced a smile, but it faltered at the edges. The model appeared then, sliding to his side with a practiced smile. "Darling," she cooed, as though to reclaim him. But her eyes darted nervously to the quadruplets, then to the ex-wife, and back again. For the first time, she seemed unsure of her footing. A journalist stepped closer, microphone raised. Forgive me, Miss, how does it feel to be back among the city's elite?" The ex-wife smiled with effortless composure. "I never left," she replied simply, her voice carrying just enough to silence the whispers. "I just chose a different path." The answer drew approving nods. The billionaire's jaw tightened. As the evening continued, conversations buzzed louder. Guests gravitated toward her, eager to compliment her children, eager to ask how she managed so gracefully after everything. She spoke with humility, never boasting, never bitter. But every word, every smile, every glance painted her as the woman who had risen, not the one who had been left behind. And the more she shone, the more invisible the model became. The cameras that had once chased her glittering gown now angled toward sapphire instead of silver. The billionaire's empire seemed, for the first time, to exist in the shadow of something greater than money: resilience. At one point, he cornered her near the balcony. The night air was cool, the city glittering beyond, a mirror of the stars above. "You've changed," he admitted, his voice quieter now, stripped of arrogance. She looked at him, not with bitterness, but with clarity. "No, she corrected softly. I've grown. You just never stayed long enough to see it. The silence that followed was heavy, filled with unspoken truths. His eyes softened, but before he could reply, one of the children tugged her hand. She turned immediately, giving her full attention to the little one. That too was an answer. Back inside, the whispers reached a fever pitch. Some guests speculated on whether she had truly forgiven him. Others debated whether his empire had lost its luster. But one thing was certain: the narrative had shifted. She was no longer his ex-wife. She was herself, strong, radiant, untouchable in her own right. The billionaire returned to the model's side, but his steps were slower, his gaze distant. She leaned into him, but he didn't seem to notice. For the first time, he wasn't the star of his own story. And she? She didn't even need to claim victory. Her very presence spoke louder than anything she could have said. If you were her, facing the man who once left you broken, would you have spoken to him with grace or with anger? Drop your answer in the comments. I'd love to hear how you would handle it. The gala reached its height. The orchestra swelled with a sweeping melody. Chandeliers sparkled brighter, as if feeding off the electric tension in the room, and the hum of conversations never strayed far from the woman in sapphire and her 4 luminous children. The billionaire could no longer ignore it. For years, he had owned every room he entered. People deferred, people admired, people envied. But tonight, for the first time, he was just another guest in a hall where she was the one commanding attention. He excused himself from the model, who stiffened as he walked away. Determined, he cut through the crowd until he found her again, this time standing near the grand staircase, surrounded by guests who were eager to hear her story. She smiled warmly, her hand resting gently on her daughter's shoulder. "May I have a word?" he asked, his voice edged with urgency. The crowd sensed the tension and slowly dispersed, giving them space. Her children lingered close, watchful but respectful. She nodded once, granting him the conversation. He drew a breath. "I underestimated you," he said, his tone raw, no longer the smooth, practiced voice of a businessman. "When I left, I thought I was chasing something better. But tonight, standing here, I see what I lost. You've become everything I should have valued from the start." His words hung heavy in the air. Guests who had pretended to drift away leaned in subtly, straining to catch every syllable. She listened calmly, her expression unreadable. When she finally spoke, her voice was steady, almost gentle. "You didn't lose me," she said. "You gave me away. And I learned to build a life without you." The honesty of her words pierced deeper than accusation could. His eyes flickered with something uncharacteristic: regret. For the first time in years, the mighty billionaire looked small. He reached out as though to touch her hand, but she drew back, not harshly, not cruelly, but with dignity. "Don't," she said softly. "You made your choice, and I made mine." A hush fell over the immediate circle of listeners. The orchestra's music swelled, almost as if punctuating the moment. The model appeared again, her heels clicking against the marble as she approached with a strained smile. She slipped her arm through his, staking her claim, but the unease in her eyes betrayed her. She knew she could never match the effortless grace of the woman before her. The ex-wife glanced at the model, then back at him, and spoke the words that sealed the night. "I don't need your empire. I don't need your name. What I have is far greater: 4 hearts that call me mama, and a life I built from ashes. That is my wealth. That is my crown." The statement struck like thunder. Applause erupted, not staged, not polite, but spontaneous. Guests clapped, some even stood, moved by her dignity and strength. The billionaire froze under the weight of it, his arm heavy at his side. The model's smile cracked, her eyes darting between him and the woman she could never eclipse. The ex-wife turned to her children, who looked up at her with pride that sparkled brighter than any chandelier. She extended her hands to them, and together they began to walk away, leaving him and the model standing in silence. In that moment, it was clear to everyone in the hall: she hadn't just reclaimed her place in society, she had transcended it. And he, the man who once believed himself untouchable, stood as a shadow of his former self, confronted with the truth that no empire, no model, no fortune could erase. He had traded away gold for glitter. The night wound down, but the echoes of her words lingered in the hall like the final notes of a symphony. Guests continued to murmur about her composure, her grace, her children. Everywhere she turned, she was met not with pity, but with admiration. For once, she wasn't a shadow of her husband's empire. She was a story of her own. As she and her children prepared to leave, a few guests stopped them to offer kind words. One elderly woman clasped her hand. "My dear, you've reminded us all what true strength looks like." Don't ever forget that she thanked her graciously, her smile calm but radiant. Her children beamed with pride, basking in the warmth of their mother's victory. At the far side of the hall, the billionaire stood with the model. His shoulders sagged, his eyes distant, his smile brittle. The cameras that once swarmed him now drifted elsewhere, capturing instead the quiet beauty of a mother and her children. He lifted his glass, but even that felt hollow. For the first time in his life, he understood what it meant to lose something priceless. The model, sensing his detachment, tightened her grip on his arm. Yet no matter how brightly she smiled, no one was looking. The spotlight had shifted, perhaps forever. Outside, the night air was cool and refreshing, carrying the faint scent of autumn leaves. The children skipped ahead down the steps, laughing, their joy uncontained now that the pressure of the evening was behind them. She watched them, her heart swelling with gratitude. A chauffeur approached with a polished black car, but she paused before entering. She took a moment to look back at the glittering hall, at the doors through which she had walked in not as a victim, but as a victor. She whispered a quiet farewell to the life that had once broken her. Turning back, she joined her children in the car. They nestled close, chatting excitedly about the gala, the chandeliers, the gowns, the whispers they had overheard. She listened, laughing softly, treasuring every word. As the car pulled away, she leaned her head against the window and allowed herself a long, deep breath. Relief, pride, peace, they all mingled within her. She had done it. She had faced the man who broke her, not with vengeance, but with dignity. She had shown her children and the world that resilience shines brighter than betrayal. And most importantly, she had reminded herself that her worth had never been tied to his choices. The billionaire's empire would continue. The model would continue her performance. But none of that mattered to her anymore. Her story wasn't theirs to control. It belonged to her and to the four bright souls who sat beside her, chatting about what snacks they hoped to find at home. As the city lights twinkled outside, she smiled and pressed a kiss to the nearest forehead. This is what love looks like, she thought. This is what wealth feels like. The car disappeared into the night, carrying not just a woman and her children, but a legacy born from heartbreak and rebuilt on resilience. Do you think she truly won the night by reclaiming her dignity, or was her greatest victory the love she built with her children? Share your answer in the comments. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Thanks for watching till the end. I'm sure you enjoyed it. We've got plenty of exciting and captivating stories lined up just for you. Simply click the image on your screen to watch the next one.